as Jimmy writes over at phillyvoice.com, the Eagles should consider punting on free agency, Jimmy. Is that to suggest that there's not attractive guys on the market, or that maybe they just needed a change at the top, maybe a change of coach? They had enough talent.
Yeah, I don't think this free agent class is all that attractive. I actually did a post like a few weeks ago and called it version 1.0 of 5 free agents that might make sense for the Eagles. So I found 5 a few weeks ago. And then when I sat down to when I said version 1.0, that would indicate that version 2.0 and 3.0 might be forthcoming thereafter. But when I sat down to find more, it was like, there's nothing. There's really not all that much appealing in terms of free agents. And the ones that, are good players, they either play positions where the Eagles really don't have a need, like defensive end, or they are old or declining, or any number of reasons that you can come up with why they would be unappealing in some way. But really the main reason why you might punt free agency would be to collect on compensatory picks that you can get in 2017. So really the basis for that article was the report that came out from Adam Schefter of ESPN, who said that the Eagles were not going to use the franchise tag on Sam Bradford, and that they were also potentially interested in Nick Foles. Now, the Bradford part, I had originally thought that one, very appealing option for the Eagles this offseason with Sam Bradford would be to franchise tag him and then try to trade him to another organization. Now, if that's off the table, if they kind of did their homework and determined that that was an unfeasible thing to do, then the next best option, if you're going to try to recoup some kind of value for him, is to just let him walk in free agency, and there's a good chance that you're going to get a third-round compensatory pick back in 2017. Now, the rub on that is you're only awarded compensatory picks if you lose more free agents than you gain. So in order to get that pick for Bradford, and then other guys like Cedric Thornton, like Walter Thurmond, like Nolan Carroll, you kind of have to punt on free agency, not sign guys, but the Eagles can actually get as many as 4 extra draft picks in 2017 if they were to just, kind of ignore free agency for this season.
That's an interesting take on it, and it makes some sense there if there isn't guys that you find attractive, Jimmy. Now, you said you've tried to put together 5 guys in version 1. Who are some of the 5? Who are some guys that you think might actually make sense if they wanted to kind of dip their toe in?
I had a couple guys from the Chiefs, which, obviously that's where Doug Peterson's coming from.
Yes.
One of them was Chase Daniel. Chase Daniel, of course, has been in the NFL for about 7 years. He never got a chance to play because he always played behind healthy quarterbacks, and good ones. He played behind Drew Brees in New Orleans for 4 years, and then he played behind Alex Smith, who the Chiefs invested a lot in to bring him in. So he really never had a chance to play. He would obviously know what to expect from Doug Peterson, and he would know what Doug Peterson would expect from him. Doug Peterson would obviously know everything about him. So if you were to bring in Chase Daniel, then that there's a comfort level there. Another guy on the Chiefs that kind of made sense to me was Jeff Allen, the left guard, who is coming off his rookie contract, so he's still young. Maybe you can plug him in there, and he can be your starter at left guard. Pretty much anything will be an upgrade over Alan Barber a season ago. So that would be another guy that kind of made sense. And then I had some other guys like Nick Fairley, who played under Jim Schwartz in Detroit, and a guy like Jason Jones, who played also for Jim Schwartz there, and another guy, safety, George Iloka from the Cincinnati Bengals, who the Bengals actually have 2 safeties that are going to be free agents this offseason, Reggie Nelson and George Iloka. Iloka's young. Nelson actually led the NFL in interceptions this season, so it's going to be difficult for them to bring both of those guys back. It's actually a pretty decent safety free agent class, unlike the rest of it. So Iloka could be a guy that maybe won't destroy in terms of what he's going to be paid on the open market. So that could be a guy that I could see making sense as well.
Jimmy Kempski with us from phillyvoice.com. Jimmy, this is Pete Thompson. I was at the sports writers dinner the other night, and Jahari Evans was there, and a big table of 10 all cheering for him when he came up and got an award. And, the light bulb went off in my head like, boy, that guy would look good in Midnight Green. Is there a chance that the Eagles could go after him, a New Jersey native?
See, the problem with Jari Evans, and he's from the area, and you can imagine that the Eagles might be appealing to him if he wanted to continue his career going. But he's going to be 33 by the time the beginning of the 2000 season begins. So depending on which way the Eagles kind of want to go with their franchise going forward, are they rebuilding for the future? If that's the case, if they're not really worried so much about 2016, if they're content to go into 2016 with sort of a bridge quarterback and a draft pick as opposed to Sam Bradford, and I don't know that a 33-year-old guard would really make the most sense, but he could fill, he could plug a hole in the short term, maybe, kind of solidify one of those positions, give them time to maybe develop a younger guy to eventually fill in there. But, certainly he had a great career. It's clearly, in some level of decline that the Saints cut him, and they were willing to take on a $5+ million cap hit to do so. They only saved a little bit over $3 million to do that, but obviously a very good player. In fact, I had previously asked Eagles players who the best opponent they ever faced was. This is going back a couple of years.
Okay.
And Cedric Thornton named Jari Evans, and he said Jari Evans basically taught him the game of football that night. He basically was telling Cedric Thornton what Thornton was going to do on every play, and then he was just manhandling him on every play. So he already has respect of one. Well, Cedric Thornton might not be there this season, but certainly he's a player that does get a lot of respect.
Jimmy
Kempski for being a great player, and could be a good fit.
Jimmy Kempski's with us. PhillyVoice.com covers the Eagles. What about wide receiver, Jimmy? I know Travis Benjamin's interesting to me anyway because Cleveland, the new quarterback coach, came from there. He was the offensive coordinator, and I guess the Eagles could use some help at that position. Would you think it's a light free agent class, but would wide receiver be one area that you think they might target, or are they content with Aguilar and Jordan Matthews? I mean, they lose Cooper, who wasn't very productive, but they don't have a lot of veterans at that spot.
Yeah, it's a good point. They really only have 3 receivers now that have, really played in games with Aguilar and Matthews and Josh Huff, who's been slow to kind of come along. Here's my problem with the wide receiver free agent class. You have Alshon Jeffrey, who's obviously a very good player, certainly number one, quote-unquote, number one type of wide receiver. And then after that, it's a huge drop-off. Benjamin's a nice player. You have other guys like Marvin Jones of Cincinnati, who's a nice player. But we're talking about, kind of quote-unquote, number 2 type wide receivers there who are going to be paid like number 1 type wide receivers. So I really don't think that'd be the way that I want to go there because I really do think that there is a big drop-off from Jeffrey to that sort of next tier there.
I want to ask you about, the quarterbacks in the draft. Bradford's the big story, but at number 13, when Kelly was here, you always looked at a quarterback that would fit him or who we thought would fit him. You look at guys now, and I don't know, you look at quarterbacks differently, obviously, with Peterson. Do you think that any of the first-round guys would be guys that would fit Philadelphia?
I don't know. I really don't know what Doug Peterson's going to prefer in a quarterback. I have no idea. I think that's pretty much anyone's guess at this point. I think the 3 guys, obviously, at the top of the draft at quarterback would be Carson Wentz. It'd be Jared Goff. It'd be Paxton Lynch. And, Lynch and Wentz have a lot of similar traits in that they're both big guys. They're both, 6'6"-ish. Wentz is like about 230. I think Lynch goes somewhere around like 240. They both have very good athletic ability. They both have very strong arms. Wentz is coming from a smaller school. Lynch is coming from, also kind of a small school, at least in terms of football in Memphis. So, those guys are kind of similar. And Goff is more of a polished player, but doesn't have the arm, doesn't have the kind of, mobility and raw talent that those other guys do, but could probably step in a little bit more quickly and contribute right away, whereas those guys might take a little bit more time.
Hey, the full stuff came out on Super Bowl Sunday. And, it's been up and down. Some people say yes, other people say no. I don't know where you fit, but do you think there's a fit between Philadelphia and the Rams to get something done if, in fact, the Eagles are interested?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, on the surface, it makes no sense whatsoever. When I wrote that compensatory pick thing, there actually are players that you can sign that wouldn't cancel out players that you lose in free agency, and those are players that are either cut, which could be the case with Foles. If the Rams were to cut him, although I don't really see that as a viable option for them because they take a big hit. I think it'd be like an $8 million cap hit if they cut him. But if they traded for him, then obviously he wouldn't mess up, them getting compensatory picks in return for losing Bradford and those other guys that I mentioned. In that regard, maybe he makes a little bit of sense. But just as a player, I mean, we already saw what he was in 2014 and then last year with the Rams. The Rams have their issues, but he's probably the worst starting quarterback in the NFL last year. So, that'd be really kind of a tough sell to the fan base. And, I mean, it'd be for the fans to have to watch a season of Dick Foles, I'd almost kind of feel bad for him.
I agree. I can Kempski, PhillyVoice.com, as, of course, the Eagles offseason as came with a bang. We'll see what's still be Fletcher Cox, the franchise tag on Sam Bradford. Those things still in limbo. And then, of course, the NFL draft will be here before we know it. Jimmy, always good to catch up, pal. Thanks for jumping on.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.